Hari Om Tat Sat. Welcome to Jyotirmayananda Society, a journey to self-realization. Please subscribe for the mystical meanings and to enjoy daily satsang with us. We are currently exploring the book Yoga of Perfection, which is a summary of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Uh, Commentaries by my Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayananda Maharaj, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. So let's get started. Today we are starting the summary of chapter 4, Jnana Yoga, the yoga of wisdom. So, this yoga of wisdom was taught to the effluent spirit of the sun from the sun god. It was handed down to Manu, the progenitor of men. Manu taught it to the ancient king Ikshvaku, and thus it continued in the royal dynasty through succession. But in course of time, it was lost due to the confusion of the royalty and they're indulging in luxuries, etc., and due to the impurities of their intellects. This pure knowledge then got lost from them. Lord Krishna is the original teacher of yoga. The Supreme Being is the very embodiment of wisdom. This shining wisdom descends from the plane of the absolute to the plane of the cosmic mind, mind being the higher mind, symbolized by the sun god. Then it descends to the plane of mind, which is of human beings, of man. From this stage of flood, the world of man, the world of senses and the sense objects, this knowledge then floods everywhere, because this is it has to be first digested and understood. This knowledge therefore is rooted in the deepest center of man, but due to various complexes that arise due to the outgoing vision of the senses, one loses hold of the immortalizing vision, until due to the rise of sattva or purity, one is entitled to listen to the immortal teachings of the Lord. So, in essence, every one of us has the intellect and the ability and the knowledge, but it has been suppressed due to sense desires and so on. But when we sit with focus, concentration, and we learn from a qualified teacher, then the teachings become spontaneous and easy to understand and put us back on the right track, so to speak. Thus, the teachings of the Gita are ancient. Arjuna is surprised to hear this. He asks, "O Lord, you were born in this age. How did you teach this to the sun god?" At this, Krishna explains that the soul of each person has passed through many incarnations. The ignorant do not know the mystery of the self, while the Lord is the knower of the self. He is the ruler of Maya and the world process. Whoever knows the secrets of self, its manifestations in the world, attains freedom from birth and death. Divine manifestation takes place in the world whenever there is decay of righteousness and rise of unrighteousness. This is the shloka. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijanyaham. Wherever there is decline in unrighteousness, I come forward. Whenever the devotees of the Lord are oppressed, further he says, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashakaya cha dushkritam dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavani yuge yuge. Meaning, whenever the devotees of the Lord are oppressed by the demoniac forces, the Lord incarnates in order to restore order and peace and to establish the path of yoga that leads to liberation. The human manifestation of the Lord becomes a medium through which the devotees can cross the ocean of the world process. The stories, the deeds of the incarnated Lord serve as the purifiers of all human beings. They inspire in them higher forms of idealism and elevate their minds to the magnanimous heights of yoga. Even so, divine manifestation takes place in the heart of the aspirant in the form of the emergence of grace and power that helps the helpless aspirant on the rugged and weary path of yoga. Whatever may be the manner of worship, the Lord alone is worshipped by all. One is rewarded according to the manner of his worship. God is the only goal and center of all beings. In diverse ways, through diverse forms and religious paths, the same Lord is being worshipped for the fulfillment of diverse desires. All favors proceed from that one God, no matter what may be the manner of one's worship. It is easier to worship the finite manifestations of God because success is achieved easily in worldly pursuits through these gods. The four classes of beings were created by God in the beginning according to the three gunas or modes of nature, which we have already studied: sattva being purity, rajas being activity, and tamas being inertia. So people tread diverse paths due to differences in their own nature also. But one who has known the Lord as the pure self beyond the three gunas rises above the limitations of um, these classes and their duties. He, while yet performing actions, attains freedom through knowledge. So those are the blessed souls who transcend the worldly limitations to achieve God. It is difficult to understand what is action, what is inaction, and what is forbidden action because the path of action is very subtle, Lord Krishna says. One who sees action in inaction and inaction in action is a wise seer indeed. Though a person would renounce all actions physically, yet he is performing them mentally. Therefore, a wise person sees action in inaction. Even so, though a wise man may perform actions, yet he has no sense of doership at all. He has surrendered his ego to God. He has merged his self in the Supreme. Therefore, these actions have been rendered without fruit. He is rooted in the self that is beyond action. This is known as seeing inaction in action. Actions of ethical values are enjoined by the scriptures. The actions of unethical values are forbidden. One must perform good actions enjoined by scriptures in order to attain the purity of heart by converting karma into yoga. In the state of realization of self, one rises above good and evil. A sage is free from desires and purposes. He is a channel of the cosmic will. He has conquered anger, greed, and desire. He is free from the influence of the pair of opposites. He is balanced in pleasure and pain. He is established in the performance of the highest sacrifice. To him, everything is Brahman. Brahman is the oblation that is poured in the fire of Brahman, and Brahman is the goal of such a sacrifice. He sees the unity of existence. In order to attain this grand state, one must take recourse to various forms of yajna or sacrifices according to one's strength and capacity. Here are some types of sacrifices that enable a person to evolve on the spiritual path. The first is Deva Yajna, performance of sacrifices for pleasing the different manifestations of God with the help of oblations in accordance with the Vedic rites, in which we pour holy items in the fire and we chant mantras. Atma Yagya, the path of wisdom in which one lifts the self by the strength of the higher self, and having merged individuality in the fire of intuitive vision, realizes the true glory of the self. This is a very high for the wisdom people who are on this path of the consciousness. They are lifting their lower self by their higher self, and they are focusing very hard on the intuitive vision through the path of wisdom. Third yajna is the yajna of restraint, the practice of pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses by the vision of illusoriness of the world, and by the development of dispassion and discrimination. So, like a tortoise or turtle, when he sees danger, he puts all his body parts within and he becomes like a shell, like a rock. Much in the same way, say a sadhaka on this path performs the yajna, where when the senses are agitated, he just goes in and he withdraws the senses so they don't come into contact with the objects and create more agitation. So he is doing that sacrifice. And fourth is the sacrifice of detached enjoyments. While engaged in worldly actions, a yogi keeps his mind detached from the enjoyments of the world. The objects of the senses are considered as oblations which are poured in the fire of purified senses. So, whatever he sees, he offers it to God. Therefore, the impressions that are caused by such experiences are not impure, they are purified because of the constant thought of purifying himself. Fifth is the yajna of self control. All the functions of senses and pranas are offered as oblations to the fire of self control kindled by knowledge. Again, to have discrimination, to know what to do, what not to do, and to have discipline is all a yajna. And the sixth one is dravya yajna, the sacrifice of wealth through charity. So when we give that to the less fortunate, we are also doing a yajna. Seventh is called tapo yajna, the sacrifice of austerity by practicing discipline of speech, body, and mind, by the practice of yamas and niyamas of Raja Yoga and related methods, etc. Or whatever we do as a penance and austerity is tapayagya. And then is Swadhyaya Yajna, number 8, the study of scriptures and repetition of Ishta Mantra. So, daily some scriptural study, attending satsangs, and understanding the wisdom of the scriptures. All that is called Swadhyaya, studying the self. And ninth yajna is Jnana yajna, the dissemination of knowledge, like I am doing currently with you, reading the scriptures, taking the wisdom of the knowledge of the enlightened sages and saints, and then sharing it with others. Uh, that is called Jnana yajna, the knowledge of sacrifice of wisdom. And then comes Pranayama yajna, offering the outgoing breath, which is a pana, in the incoming breath, prana, and incoming in the outgoing. So basically, that also is, although unconsciously we do it, it is still a yajna, the practice of pranayama, that is of inhalation, exhalation, and retention. And the 11th yajna is the yajna of regulated food. By rigid diet control, one offers the life breaths into the um, fire of his discipline. That is, one weakens the senses and passions, so all that is being controlled. Thus one should perform some form of yajna in order to attain blessedness. Out of these yajnas or sacrifices, jnana yajna or sacrifice of knowledge is higher than the sacrifice of wealth, because all sacrifices consummate eventually in knowledge. That knowledge is acquired by approaching a guru or a spiritual preceptor, by serving him with humility and reverence, and by understanding the subtleties of the scripture from his lips, because he has the experience, the knowledge, and he has walked on that path. When knowledge shines, one's intellect becomes free from grief and delusion. The fire of knowledge destroys all karmas, and there is no purifier greater than knowledge. A man of faith, of self control, attains knowledge. Having attained knowledge, he attains supreme peace. But one who is devoid of faith, who is full of doubts, continues groping in the darkness of ignorance. Knowledge is the sword to slay the doubts of the heart. Therefore, O Arjuna, arise and take refuge in yoga. Thus, we have ended the fourth discourse entitled Jnana Yoga, Yoga of Wisdom. And in tomorrow's satsang, we will start chapter number 5 summary. It's called the Karma Sannyas Yoga. Hari Om Tat Sat. This is Swami Nikhilananda.